Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
What a voice.
Beautiful voice. Hey, thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook, where we kick around the local issues here in the St. Louis area, thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth, who make this program possible week in and week out. Let's meet the panelists joining us tonight, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. Mr. Joe Holleman from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, sitting in for Bill McClellan, who's taking a couple of weeks off. Ray Hartmann, one of our founders, he's with St. Louis Magazine. He's the chief cook and bottle washer there. And from the St. Louis American and STLmag.com, we say hello on this Thursday to Alvin, Reid. But we're going to start with you, Joe, because it was a heck of a golf tournament that was in St. Louis last week. You know, it was down to the last minutes, last holes on Sunday. And is it Brooks Koepka? Is that his name?
Yep.
He won, but Tiger was on the march. The crowds were huge. It was wonderful to have the PGA Championship at Belle Reve, and congratulations to the folks at Belle Reve. But it seemed to me, television, radio, newspapers, there was a lot of attention to how the players loved St. Louis. And I could think, okay, maybe one or two of these articles, but it seemed like for days we kept hearing about how much the PGA loved us. And I just don't see that anywhere. I was kind of bemused. How about you?
You know, I felt the same way. After the first day, I love when they ask the questions. When you ask a pro, when you're up there right after the tournament's over, and they say, you know, well, what did you think of St. Louis? Well, of course they're going to say nice things. I mean, these are professionals and making money. They're not going to say, not really crazy about the city, but, you know, they're going to say good things about it. And I think St. Louis did an amazing job, and the crowds were great, and they were well behaved in the golf thing. And
right.
I mean, it was all credit to the folks of St. Louis. I do think that what I saw through the media coverage was this incessant behavior on the part of the media and St. Louis somehow in general, where we always feel like we're trying to justify ourselves to people as, no, look, we really are a good city. And we are a good city. So can we get past that? Are we trying to make Stan Kroenke jealous still to prove that we're a good sports town?
I know that I know that, and I don't want to stop you on a roll, but
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just go ahead.
It
wasn't that much of a roll.
It's only half our show.
Thank you, I will.
It was a mini roll.
And I understand that your confidence is in check, Joe. But I mean, first of all, one of the most truculent athletes in the history of the world was effusive in his praise for St. Louis. So the members of the media, for once, were not making this up. When Tiger Woods talks about how respectful the crowds were, the same crowds at the British Open that were screaming at him while he was in the middle of his swing, teeing off from whatever green or rock he was teeing off from at the British Open, I think that's a story for a lot of people, in the same way that Tiger Woods finishing second was also a story when he barely landed in
a story.
It's
I seem to be hearing it 3 days afterwards.
But that's because the players were the ones who kept perpetuating it.
Hand me the pom-poms.
Here you go.
I'd like to actually, because I don't normally take this role, and generally I agree with you. I think we're very insecure in the media. I don't question that at all, and the sports media more so than others. In this particular case, the crowds were empirically among the largest they've ever had at a golf tournament. And the players, forget about, yes, we're going to have our insecure stuff, but the players really were on Twitter and in interviews seriously calling out the crowd. I don't remember after, and I don't watch every golf tournament, obviously, certainly watch most of the majors. I truly don't remember players calling out. No, I think it was very cool that they did. I think it's nice. I think it's a nice thing.
Wait, Joe, I'm going to grab your roll and put some butter on.
I'm done rolling.
I'm going to grab your roll and butter it up because he's right. It was almost embarrassing afterwards.
I don't think it was.
It was like, okay, you had huge crowds. And what's the Carroll House? Because we deserve nice things, okay? All right, so people flocked out to the PGA. Sunday was riveting. Sunday was something special, okay?
Yeah.
But it was Sunday, and if Tiger Woods hadn't made the cut like Phil Mickelson, all them people probably wouldn't have been out there, and we'd probably moved on already.
Oh, I don't
This
know.
was
No,
a
that's
Tiger
not
show,
true.
and
No.
it was fantastic. But folks, it's over. And quite frankly, people got their minds on the Cardinals winning 10 straight games, and probably
Well, they
have
got-
forgotten about
The
it.
one thing I
very
will
true.
say, there was some amazing golf, including when I was watching on Saturday afternoon. I saw one guy go into the sand 3 times on one hole, followed. The next shot was a guy hitting a hole-in-one. And I swear the media were more obsessed with how the players felt about St. Louis than actually covering
that's
these
not
true.
very
That's not-
dramatic
that is-
sporting
that's
events.
I think
not
ours
true.
was.
It was a
That's
great
not
golf
true.
tournament.
That's not
It
true.
was the big story was Tiger Woods' amazing comeback and the drama on Sunday.
wouldn't know it.
I don't know. I was in
No,
Chicago.
no,
I was
no,
in
but
Chicago
Tiger-
the last
but
2
other-
days, and I didn't
if
hear
you-
Wait a
anybody
second.
say.
You
If
really
you- so wait a minute.
believe
If
that
you-
the love
right.
affair between the players and the city eclipsed the Tigers?
Local
the Tiger
media
angle?
coverage
No,
afterwards,
no,
yes,
it didn't.
I do.
But I will say
Do you
this.
Take a
know
look
that-
at the Twitter.
Do you
I
know
was
that
there
the ratings
Sunday.
were up
I was-
69% over last year?
That's
Do you
because
suppose that's
Tiger
because of
Woods had a chance
of
to
course,
win.
that's what
But that
I
had
agree
nothing
with
to
you.
do. If it had been that tournament they had in they used to have in Moline, Illinois.
The John Deere?
The John
No,
Deere.
well,
if Tiger Woods was winning that golf tournament going into Sunday, the ratings would be
But
up.
in
I'm not
Moline,
hating on
Moline, they have not been painted as the clan-waving, puppy mill, meth cooking capital of
That
the
is
United
not-
States.
And none of that goes
That's
on
how
in
we
town
have
and
been
country where all
portrayed.
these people were.
That's how we have been
All right,
portrayed.
okay.
So I
We
think
gotta
it has
move
been
on.
This is
very
wait,
nice.
one
Okay.
thing. The fact is, you could argue all that. The players said far more, a number of them on Twitter, and you very rarely see them
That's
do
right.
it.
All
That's
right.
all
True.
I'm saying.
That's
They called
very
out
true.
the crowds
Okay.
for how good they were.
But it was nice
Great
to
thing.
shine.
And Wendy, I want to ask you because one of Alvin's colleagues at the St. Louis American has written a thoughtful piece saying, hey, maybe the PGA should build some sort of golf facility in urban St. Louis as kind of a thank you. And I know Ozzie Smith and others were thinking about something like that through PGA Reach. Now, we're hearing that after the tournament here in St. Louis, the driving ranges were full of golfers. Is it time to strike while the iron is hot, build some golf facilities in St. Louis and capture that lightning in a bottle?
And this would be, I know it was proposed in the NGA sector, right?
Somewhere around there.
Around Gateway
Yeah.
Academy. Okay. I think it's a noble idea if you can get that kind of money together. This person had put a great deal of thought, and to the extent of getting the kids transportation to the golf academy. I don't know that we're deserving of a thank you to that on that scale, but I think that certainly you could encourage kids.
Sure.
To golf. I don't know that we need to build a world-class
Well,
facility as a result, because I think,
I
like
would say-
Alvin
I would say-
said,
I think it's a good-
we have really short attention spans, and I'm not sure
And why
that.
does it? Okay, all right. So the PGA was here, and oh my God, everybody was praising St. Louis. Well, why does the PGA have to build it? Last time I looked, what is it? How much it costs to be a member of Bell Reeve? Now, I'm not saying the people at Bell Reeve
You
need
have
to
to
pay
be
for this.
invited. It doesn't matter what it
How much
costs.
money you got?
Right.
Okay, but there's plenty of money in St. Louis. How about we just build it? Oh no, PGA's got to be now involved. And the PGA and these golfers who loved us so much, come on, let's call them up right now and say like, hey, build this in
They might
urban
do
St.
that.
Louis.
They might.
I will say this.
they'd say,
If
like,
you champion the effort, I bet you could raise some dough to
if
put
I
up.
championed the effort, I would probably come away so disillusioned that right.
The PGA. Let's say one thing. The PGA. I think the golf course idea, which has been out there before actually, but I think it's a good idea. If that,
Sure.
I don't think this event is going to translate into some huge golf wave one way or the other.
'Cause they didn't like us
But
that much.
I will say this, and to Alvin's point, PGA made a whole lot of money. They control
they
everything.
did.
And
Well,
my
that's what
guess
he's
is
saying.
the PGA is probably would behave more like, I don't know for a fact, but it'd be like the NCAA making a lot of money. They probably don't do a lot of thank you note.
Exactly.
But having said that,
so-
I think the idea, however it might be funded, is worth pursuing.
Well, I think however it might be funded.
Right. That's
I say, as long as you're not asking for my tax money, knock yourself out and build
Well, and I
as
don't
many
think they
golf
are.
courses as you want to.
Right.
So the idea of would it be a good idea? I'll say sure. Get that ball rolling, Alvin. I mean, it comes
on
down
it.
to is how do you
You
pay
two-
for it?
You're too
But the-
busy
but the-
trashing
but the
the
writer-
And if the
You two aren't it.
PGA
Okay, well,
is
let me
going
ask
to
you.
build it
Let me
great.
Let me ask you
But
this,
the-
Joe. What's going to come first? Golf course near the NGA site in northern St. Louis, or basketball courts in Forest Park?
Well, that's a very good question, but I would say basketball courts in Forest Park would come before a golf course at the NGA
I would
site
think so.
would.
Probably time.
It's a
Antonio
lot
French has
cheaper.
talked about
Yeah, it's
that.
a
and I
lot
think he's
cheaper.
right.
Right when I moved back to town, Freeman Bosley was mayor, and he had the idea of building a 9-hole golf course right there snug on downtown St. Louis, okay? Technically where the Edward Jones Dome ended up kind of
That's right,
being
that's right,
built.
you're right.
Got completely laughed out of the world. So Tiger Woods comes along, all of a sudden golf is the most popular sport in the world. We
And
missed
don't have-
our chance.
Yeah. Well, we
missed
do.
our chance.
Don't forget, you got
That's
Forest
a-
Park and Ruth Park. And
I realize
yeah.
that, but that was why people said, "Oh no," because people don't want to go to the city. They Forest Park and blah 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 blah. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you about Wesley Bell. You know, he's going to be the next prosecutor because he won the Democratic primary and the Republicans have no candidate on the November ballot. Now, the big question that he's been asked this week, Alvin Reid, is should he reopen the Michael Brown case? Will he? And he hasn't said. He's, not committing one way or the other. So get out your crystal ball. Is he going to reopen the Michael Brown case?
No, I don't think he will. I don't think he should. I think that has been adjudicated by the Justice Department. I don't think he could get a conviction. And also, if you look at it, it's kind of like, okay, guy, you need to prosecute criminals, which you haven't done before. Now you're in charge of, the prosecutor's office. Before we even have a discussion about that, how about you just do your job, okay, that you're going to probably be elected to do. Now, if he wanted to give some leniency to this grand juror that just wants to say all that went on in that, grand jury panel, that might be something, but it's a bad idea. And I'm not feeling sorry for St. Louis in the least. You're saying like, oh, this will old wounds and all that. I could care less about that. It's just a bad idea because he can't win the case.
I just don't understand why we keep having this conversation, because as we have said a million times sitting around this table, this was not the Justice Department under Jeff Sessions. This was the Justice Department that exonerated Darren Wilson was the Justice Department under Eric Holder, who was under President Barack Obama. So I'm not sure if that's enough to create a groundswell at the polls and sweep him past Bob McCullough in the primary, but it should be revisited.
This is not part of the Justice Department inquiry was on civil rights issues, and that's unrelated to whether a prosecutor would have charged Officer Wilson.
Eric Holder said it wasn't prosecutable.
I get that, but I'm saying they were not looking at the same set of issues as to a prosecution on the initial prosecution. I think Alvin's basically right that well, first of all, it's not. I'd be really surprised if it is going to happen. I mean, and the only way he should bring it is if he really feels he can win a case, and it seems to me very unlikely that would happen.
But you know what the thing is? There's a couple of movies going around there that are being shown at St. Louis institutions that are raising serious questions about this, and I think a lot of people, disagree even with the Holder report. And by the way, to Wendy's point, the Holder report did say that Darren Wilson acted reasonably given the evidence. It's almost a quote. Right. And so, people have new information. If there is new information, I think Wesley Bell should open it up.
I do too. If
there isn't new information, then
every now and then, an electorate will come out and make a statement, a symbolic statement. And I think that's what happened with Wesley Bell versus Bob McCullough. There was a segment of the population that said, we're tired of the way things have gone, and this is our way now to show that displeasure. And more power to the electorate for that. It now becomes Wesley Bell's job to look past the symbolic and focus on the substantial. And reopening the Michael Brown case has no substance, because both McCullough's investigation and Eric Holder's investigation both had to do with whether or not Darren Wilson was liable for criminal charges. They were both indeed the exact same studies, and they found no credible evidence in an 86-page report So if somebody wants to reopen that case, you're saying forget the county's investigation, forget Eric Holder, Barack Obama's Justice Department investigation, let's do it again. We're back on this symbolic. We're doing it for punitive. We want to make a statement. What I want to do is see improvement. And I think Wesley Bell would be far more wise to not open it up because there is nothing there. So let's go with substantive changes. He got a symbolic victory. Let's see him put substance to it. Maybe he ends up being the best.
I think it's well
Let him
said.
be the best
I agree with
prosecutor
that.
ever.
All I said was, I think if he, to your point, you said if there's new information and he's the prosecutor, he can look at it. I don't disagree with you. I said,
And the
I don't
chance
think
there being
it's-
new
I doubt
information in
it.
that case.
I doubt
Right.
it.
Slim and none.
But I suspect he was elected by a lot of people who would like to see him open it.
don't know.
But
I don't know
if he
that. I
never
don't know.
promised
I don't know.
anybody he was going to
He
do
never
that,
said that.
then he
didn't
has
run on that.
absolutely no regard to do that.
Right. He didn't run on reopening the Michael Brown investigation. And I mean,
That's not what I said.
But
I
I'd
said
say-
a lot of people voted for him and they'd like to see
Well,
that
a lot
open.
of people voted for him, to Joe's point, that didn't like the outcome there, but that's not the same. Just because you did, I'm one of the people that didn't love a lot of the process either, whether the outcome was right or wrong. My point is, just because people might have voted that way, I never said that it should be reopened, and I think most people who voted for him didn't do it because of that.
I think a lot of people feel that justice was denied. And I think a lot of those folks
Some of them, but I don't
voted
think
for
anybody, again, if
Wesley
it'd been
Bell.
one thing if Wesley Bell had campaigned and said, I'm going to reopen this, then we'd be having I think, a
Can I
better.
throw
He
in
did
real
vote
quick?
against McCullough was systemic.
I was going to say, like, man, he whooped him so bad that I just don't think this was
think he's
Michael
outworked
Brown
him, actually.
No.
voters. I just
Yeah.
that
He just outworked him.
Yeah,
They're
no,
just
I
saying
agree.
we have a
I think
chance
a couple
to
of things
change.
happened. When you had Lacey Clay running with Cori Bush, that was a popular contest, and neither person was for McCullough. And then that weird South County dynamic where McCullough had gone after Ernie Trachis. And, if you
That's a
were
good point.
kind of an Ernie Trachis fan in South County, you weren't going to vote for
And give,
McCullough.
give Wesley Bell credit for having run a really hard-working
that's what I'm
campaign.
saying.
He's the winner.
Yeah, that's-
All right,
that's
Give
what I'm
him the
saying.
credit.
Now,
I mean, he won.
how is Claire McCaskill run a really smart campaign, Ray Hartmann, when there's a Supreme Court confirmation hearing in the offing? She's in Missouri.
Right.
Presumably, a lot of people want Brett Kavanaugh as the next Supreme Court justice. But she's also a Democrat, and there are a lot of groups that have been loyal to Claire McCaskill who do not want Brett Kavanaugh in the Supreme Court. So, what's she going to do?
Well, I think I think she should be a Democrat, and frankly, it's unfortunate that we've kind of lost the whole concept of advice and consent. This idea that just because you won the presidency, Democratic or Republican, you're entitled to your pick on the Supreme Court, and that the Congress should basically rubber stamp it unless it's somebody heinous, is not what advice and consent was meant to be. So the fact is, she has every right to look at it. And I would say this, as a Democrat, I would be very offended by the process because they've gone to historic lengths to keep any analysis of Mr. Kavanaugh's record to a minimum on the theory that the victor gets the spoils, so be it. So I think she should vote against him if that's her conscience.
Joe, I'm going to get back on your roll again and use another term of yours. Symbolic, okay? All kind of symbolism happened 2 years ago, and Donald Trump ended up being president of the United States. The one thing the Democrats better learn is, do you want to win? Claire, do you want to win? Are you going to stop this guy from being a Supreme Court justice? No. Donald Trump won the election. Donald Trump, whoever he appointed, was going to be somebody most Democrats probably didn't agree with. Look, we got to move on. My advice to her is say, like, look, he's qualified to be a Supreme Court justice. I'm going to vote for him.
Well,
Let's start the election right now. In fact, she should come out tomorrow and say, like, hey, I'm going to vote for the dude. Now, all y'all that were going to vote for me, get over it. And on November the 9th or the
Alvin,
8th, please get out here and vote for me.
You've been, without any testifying, anything, you're convinced he's qualified? I mean, that he's a good choice?
I can find far more proof that he is, considering every attorney, every review that he's ever had, every opinion that has been
haven't even had a
analyzed by
hearing.
law schools. No one is questioning.
So should they not have a hearing?
No, wait. Why would you
Joe?
jump to that? You said what I'm saying is I can produce more evidence that he's qualified than you can that he's not. Why don't you produce that he's not?
No, I'm saying,
What do you point to?
Wait a minute.
Because what Claire McCaskill
think
will
they ought to have a
do.
hearing first.
What
That's what I
Claire
think.
McCaskill will do is what politicians do. She will vote against him. The Republicans will vote for him. Because the notion of advise and consent while wonderful in theory, is never what politicians follow. They vote the party line.
Actually, once
it
upon
just
a time
depends.
they did.
It just
Please
depends on
remember-
what side you are.
Once upon a time
as
it
to
was.
where
Remember
us.
that this is Senator McCaskill in a red
Thank
state.
you.
And after Donald Trump was elected in outstate, well out of the view of the big metropolitan blue areas, she was talking about meeting him halfway and doing everything that she could to work with the Trump administration. So I just think that like
And we
all
can-
politicians.
we can argue as much as we want
Right.
to about it, and Claire McCaskill said, like, you know what, that's fine,
me.
Ray, but you ain't running. I am, and I
If
want to
she-
win.
if
And the
she
best thing
wants-
that could happen
Okay.
for Democrats is that I hold my seat. So how about everybody help me hold my seat instead of
right.
telling me
What,
what I
let me
should
ask you,
or
let me
shouldn't
ask you,
vote for?
what percentage of Democrats do you think in Missouri want her to vote for Kavanaugh? Now, if she
None,
polls,
probably zero.
okay, well,
That's not
okay.
the point.
And, all right,
That
and what
is not
how
the
about
point.
independence? Do we know? Is
Who
it,
knows?
well, how about having the hearing? Is
No,
there a
you can
problem
have
with
the
that?
hearing.
Well, we
What
haven't
you're
had a
talking-
hearing, so everybody says she
Have
should
the
vote for
hearing.
him, no
We're
matter
gonna
what
have a hearing.
happens.
Well, at least
Are you saying there's not going to be a hearing on
Well,
a
there-
Supreme Court candidate?
There was
Well,
last
it
year.
doesn't sound like you
No,
guys think
no,
there
that's
ought
a
to be.
What is it
point.
you're saying, Ray?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Everybody's quite clear.
Right.
You know, but
Well,
I thought was most interesting was when Josh Hawley, in an article about this very subject, said that Kavanaugh should be confirmed without delay. Stop the delay. And I thought, did you feel that way about Merrick Garland last
Well, yeah,
year?
exactly. And my point is, I think you could make a
All right.
case for the Democrats giving them the Merrick Garland treatment
Giving the
and
Merrick
say,
Garland.
let's see if we win the Senate.
Well, you know what? If they
let's
could, they would.
Let's
If
push
they
it.
could.
Well,
Looking
they
at it
I
as
try.
a
always
term.
put my money
You're
on
looking at a midterm, not a
politicians playing
general.
politics, right?
Okay.
No, I
Now,
agree
how
with
about
that.
you, Joe Holleman? By the way, it's good to see you again.
see
Thanks
you.
for joining us. And the nurses at the county jail have been asking for a pay increase, but they want the money to come out of Prop P. The county executive has said, no, Prop P is for public safety. Take the money out of the health department budget, your nurses. Well, now we're hearing that they can't get enough nurses at the county jail. So even though Prop P was voted as public safety, no one was talking about nurses or health care, should they take the money out of the Prop P fund and give it to the nurses?
No. And first of all, let me say that coming from people in my family who have been nurses and friends of them, no more noble job. And I would love to see all nurses get into one giant union and actually exert the power that is somewhat commensurate with the good they do for society. However, Prop P was not sold with any mention, and I went and checked Prop P material. It was for hiring police officers. It was for hiring so second officers could be added to cars in an area where it's needed. It was for body cameras. It was for dashboard cameras. It was for computerized crime reporting. None of it was ever said, oh, we're going to take this and widen it out. The reason I have a problem spending it from Prop P is then once again government gets into, oh, it's a three-card Monte game. Where's the money going? Where's the money? Oh, I voted for this for police officers. Well, they work in the jail and that's connected to, and once again we erode a little bit. Anybody trusting it when a politician gets up and says, here's how we're going to spend your money. Sadly, they never sold Prop P at all for anything other than you'll be safer, we'll have
you
more
go.
and better police.
End of subject, right?
Well, I just think if you work at the jail, you're part of corrections, which is part of public safety. I think it fulfills Proposition.
And if you're a
B.
clerk at the jail or you're a janitor at the jail, I mean, the point comes in is this was sold for one specific purpose. So to turn around and do something different, I just think is disingenuous to the voters who supported you.
I'm a county voter who was sold this bill of goods, and I'm very happy that if I do think that the county jail is an important part of the criminal justice system and law enforcement and public safety. And so I voted for it as a county resident, and and whether they mentioned specifically that addressing a nursing shortage at the county jail was part of it, doesn't bother me at all.
Well, it's not
And-
whether or
and-
not
and-
they did mention that. They didn't mention
Well, then
that.
they didn't mention it, so
And
fine.
with all
And it doesn't
due
bother me,
respect to
because it's
the
still for
clerks and the janitors, I don't think you can compare the work under that public safety umbrella to what the nurses are actually doing when it comes to the prisoners. And if we don't have enough nurses, what's the alternative? I mean, we don't have an alternative when it comes to the health care of people
to
who
borrow
are
your
incarcerated.
role, to borrow the role you're on, this is not meant as disrespect to janitors, nurses, or anybody. It's about disrespect to the voters. who were promised one thing, that this is what this is
But I
for.
was like actually a voter. I was
Yeah.
a voter.
But
Okay.
and
well,
I
you know
don't
what?
have a.
Here's what's
And you don't
gonna
have a
happen.
problem, but I'm saying the point is, if you say you're taken out of there, then when do you trust the next time when someone says, this is for streets?
Or the zoo.
Or this.
Or the
I would
zoo.
say
All
that,
right.
Charlie,
All
if
right.
they can
Shut up.
find
But
it
to me,
elsewhere, I
this-
think they
we're
should.
not. We're
Yes.
not.
Okay, we're out
if
of
they
time
can
on this
find
one.
it,
I
they
know
should.
that our viewers are going to have some comments on this during your turn in a matter of moments. Hey, Alvin Reid, Business Insider, has ranked, believe it or not, the Compton Hill Water Tower as the ugliest building in the state of Missouri. That's outrageous. It's not ugly, and it's kind of cool looking. I would say the America Center would be on the list before that. How about you? What's the ugliest building out there?
Well, I'm going to make it Metro because Newport and Covington, Kentucky, across the river in Cincinnati is high-priced real estate. They turned it around in like less than 20 years. Carpet bomb that Continental Grain thing on the other side of the river, and let's get something
But
going
for the
over there.
Department of Homeland Security, he doesn't really mean.
Yes,
like
you're right.
carpet
They'll
bomb.
probably there
Okay.
be at my house when I get
Not
home.
literally.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I still have. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think the Compton Heights Tower. I mean, I think that's our history,
Cool.
right? I mean, it's not
Why
supposed
did-
to be
how did that get on
Architectural
the list?
Digest. I have no idea.
Somebody said it was ugly.
I mean,
People were writing in and they said it was
beauty
ugly.
is in the eye of the beholder. So is.
I mean,
ugly.
I
Tower's
think like
supposed to
the
be ugly.
pet building in downtown is questionable. I think that the Centene Garage is questionable. I think we have some buildings that are not too beautiful. Most of our parking garages are really underachieving, but I wouldn't say that the Compton Hill Water
I
Tower
wouldn't
is
either. I
ugly.
don't get that
No.
at all.
Compton Hill Water Tower is one of 3 that are known as standpipe water towers. 3 of only 7 left in the United States. We're the only city with 3 of them. People actually come to town
Yeah.
to visit them.
Yes, they do.
And
it's
take
a camp.
photos.
Tear it down.
They
It's a
were all
camp.
done in the 1880s and 1890s, separate architectural. I think they're beautiful, all 3
Thank
of
you,
them.
Professor.
I think
We're
they
out
should
of
all be
time.
saved.
Hey, folks, you can always write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those tweets, hashtag Donnybrook STL, and those emails, letters at ketc.org. Don't touch that dial or pick up that clicker because Donnybrook, your turn is next, and Wendy and I will take your phone calls and read those tweets. Thanks to Joe Holleman for joining us. See you in just a moment.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.